It sure looks like the Browns need a new kicker, and fast. We'll talk about it coming up in the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. A week one loss to the Bengals showed us once again that the Browns are still held back by their inability to identify two key positions and their inability to do the fundamental things. Despite the loss, Cleveland's defense was as advertised, particularly in the second half of this game, and it may be hard to feel this or be excited about this right now, but the future does look very bright in Cleveland. I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And listen, the main reason that the Browns remain a bad football team is because they fail to do fundamental things that it takes to win. That played itself out on the field behind me today against the Cincinnati Bengals. And they've also failed to identify two key positions. One of them we know all too well, the quarterback position. That's eluded them for years since they came back in 1999. They're still looking for their quarterback. Maybe he's on this roster. Maybe he's someone they're going to draft next year. Whoever it is, they're still looking for that position. And the other one is kicker. The last 2 decades of Browns football that are talked about as the embarrassing era that they are of this franchise, everyone outside of Cleveland makes fun of the last 2 decades plus era of Cleveland Browns football. So many of those games, the gut-wrenching losses that fans, you, have felt over the years, they come down to the Browns not being able to find a kicker or a quarterback. Those are the 2 things that have held them back from being a true playoff contender that can go on a deep run, from being, frankly, a Super Bowl contender. It's those 2 things. Like this franchise's inability to identify a viable and reliable kicker is I mean, it's absurd. It's insane. It is mind-numbing. I don't understand. And that's what played itself out on the field today. I know there was other issues, and that's where the comments on the fundamentals in general come into play. The drops from Jerry Jeudy, there was multiple today, not great. The drops from Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman that led to interceptions. Now, I will say, 2 flukier interceptions in general. You don't normally see 2 times in a game where a ball deflects off a receiver's hands, and it takes a Herculean effort by the defensive back to dive, lay out, and keep that ball from hitting the turf. You don't see that happen twice in a game. I mean, that is a rare thing that played itself out on the field today with those 2 interceptions. But they did happen. They still happen. And that's, at the end of the day, those obviously cost Cleveland in the long run when it came to winning this football game, including the one at the end there from Cedric Tillman that quite literally wound up being the deciding interception that ended the game altogether. But at the heart of all this, though, the difference in today's game was the fact that the Cleveland Browns didn't put 4 extra points on the board that they should have had. The missed PAT after Cedric Tillman scores the awesome touchdown. He was great today, other than the obviously the drop at the end. He was awesome today. He met the hype in terms of being that number 2 wide receiver for this team, and had that euphoric moment that was obviously derailed later by the interception that deflected off his hands. But the missed PAT took the wind out of the sails. Chance to tie the game. Chance to go up 3, I should say, and make it where that if the Bengals only kick a field goal, it's a tie ball game, and then maybe we get overtime today on this football field behind me. And then you get the chance at the end to knock home the potential game-winning field goal And you missed that wide right as well. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how this team has monopolized the ability to lose football games in the most ridiculous and unimaginable ways possible. It's snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Like that's what they do. They had so many chances today to win this football game, and they botched it because the kicker couldn't, because Andre Schmidt couldn't knock home two kicks that he's expected to make as a kicker in this league, and frankly is the guy that they kept on the roster, the 53-man roster, because they thought that he had such a consistent camp in preseason that was the guy that they needed to roll with. I think it's fair to question if that was the right choice now. I think it's fair to ask if they should have kept obviously Dustin Hopkins. And I understand Hopkins maybe wasn't the best solution either. He had his fair share of flaws last year. They clearly spilled out over into the preseason, and they didn't like that it was still a thing, and they decided to move on. I understand in this league, like, it's a make or miss league when it comes to kicking. You either make it or you miss it. And the Browns, though, more often than not, have had guys who miss it and can't seem to find any sort of stability at this position, this position specifically. And it was another game where that proved costly. I don't know what the answer is. I understand you got to sometimes with young kickers too, like, you got to give them time. And it's funny, like, some of the names that I quite literally wrote down a list of all the kickers since Phil Dawson who have kicked for this team and have not panned out. And there's names on this list. Greg Joseph, I think, went on to have a pretty okay career. I know Zane Gonzalez, I think, ended up having an okay career. Like, there's some names on this list of guys who ended up being, like, okay in the league after their time with the Browns, where it was one of those things where it's like, well, maybe if you just gave him more time. I know you got to give it time. And what's interesting is I don't know where the Browns are at with this decision specifically. Kevin Stefanski was asked after the game whether or not they'd consider bringing in some competition for Andre Schmidt at the kicker spot specifically. I'll play you Kevin Stefanski's answer here. You tell me. To me, this felt sort of ominous and like it was an open-ended thing, but maybe this points to they're going to try to be patient.
Not there, those type of things. Points are at premium, obviously, so that's frustrating. Andre's had a really, really good camp. He's done a nice job for us. So, well, not there.
When he says I'm not there, I don't know if that means I'm not there in terms of moving on from Schmidt or making him have to compete for the job again, or if he just means like I'm not there in terms of making that decision. That's the sort of open-ended part of it. But I can tell you right now, like the Browns might be stuck with another kicker that they cannot rely on, that they cannot trust, and that's a recipe for losing when it's all said and done. The two things that directly impact winning the most in this sport are your quarterback, who can erase a lot of flaws for you, overcome a lot of mistakes for you, and help you win football games in a pinch, in crunch time, and do some pretty damn amazing things to will your team to victory. And kickers, kickers are quite literally the only player on the field that when they take the field, other than obviously for kickoffs, but most of the time when they take the field, they can directly impact the result of a game with one play, with one kick, with one thing that they do. It's their job. And to not have that figured out at this point, again, is mind-numbingly frustrating, and I know fans felt that leaving the stadium. I was ready to talk about, from even a positive standpoint, like had the Browns lost this game any other way, had Schmidt made that field goal, and then Joe Burrow leads the Bengals on a game-winning drive where they hit a field goal to win it, I think fans would have been upset, but they would have left the stadium feeling like, man, we put up a good fight, and there's some things to sort of be positive about and look forward to, which I'll get to coming up down the rundown here, which we'll talk about. But those things all got overshadowed because once again, the Browns start a season with a kicker that they cannot trust. I think they probably need to explore their options. I don't know what those options are. Maybe it's bringing back Dustin Hopkins. They're probably going to give him another week here and see how it goes. But to start your Browns tenure, to start another season with that being the thing that costs you is as frustrating as it gets, because it directly took 4 points, kept 4 points off the board for kicks that he needs to make, makeable kicks at that. It's not like he was kicking 60-yarders here. These were makeable kicks for any average kicker in the NFL, and it's the reason the Browns right now are 0-1. And like I said, I know the drops are part of the story today. I know there were some other flaws in terms of what played out today on the field behind me. here at Huntington Bank Field. But the kicking is the thing that sort of steals the show when it comes to what defined this game today, and the fact that 4 points, you end up 4 points short, or you end up a point short, really, of winning the game, of tying the game, and you could have won it with the other 3 points on top of that were missed today. And I know, like, what people are going to throw back, they're going to say, well, hey, if he makes those kicks, the Bengals do things differently. Yeah, the way this defense was playing, though, I'm willing to bet that they would have had something to say about the Bengals and what their offense would have been capable of doing or pulling off in crunch time or whatever had they made the kicks and been up in the game or whatever, because that unit was great. They allowed 7 yards in the second half, and that's where I want to go next, because we were right about this Browns defense and how dominant they could be. We'll talk about it coming up here on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less than 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and honestly, one of my favorite ways to follow along with football. I love checking projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 yards, or Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. And this year, they're offering max discounts, which gives you easy opportunities to cash out. For example, next week, they have a max discount on Lamar Jackson, 0.5 passing yards. Easy. Play more. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Well, stop. Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN to get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already need. At first, I thought it was too good to be true. It's totally legit, though. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank, PayPal, or even any gift card for Amazon or other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app and use my limited time promo code. Again, touchdown. For a limited time, 25% off for a limited time with a 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's a promo code touchdown. Again, offers may vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. So lost in the dilapidated way this game ended and the frustration from fans as they exited the stadium was the fact that this Browns defense looked as advertised and gave them a chance to win. They started a little bit slow. That defensive line that I've raved about all offseason and leading up to the season that I thought was going to dominate this game today, they had a little bit of a rough first half. They were getting pushed around, especially on the first drive. The first drives of this game, by the way, were remarkable. I mean, it was like football. It was football in its purest form. A 7-minute and 28-second drive from the Bengals to eat up basically half the first quarter, and they score a touchdown. And it felt like it was a just a soul-crushing drive to open up the game where the defense didn't really give up much resistance. And then the Browns offense comes out and does a 16-play, 9-minute and 50-second drive that extends into the second quarter and scores a touchdown of their own to tie it up. And then after that first drive, I felt like the defense tightened up a little bit. They got better. They found ways to limit the Bengals. And then that spilled over into the second half where they were just absolutely brilliant, lights out. Everything that we said about this group, we thought about this group, came to fruition in that second half. As I said before the break, they allowed just 7 yards in the second half in total. And there's a stat that puts this loss in perspective even more, just how unfathomable and absurd it is that they lost this game. The Browns had the Bengals to 7 yards in the second half. It's the fewest yards in the second half by a winning team in the last 25 years. That was according to ESPN. That's insane. That's insane. the least amount of yards a team that won a game has ever had in the second half of a game in 25 years. And we're talking about like that's going back to the 90s. That's going back to like when the Browns were basically reinstated into the league in 1999 and then 2000 as their second. Like, that's how far back you have to go to have a stat like that where a team won without having more than 7 yards or that had less than 7 yards and a half and still in the second half and still won. Again, these are the types of things that I like I can't I don't know. It's these are the types of losses that I feel for Browns fans on more than ever, because you guys show up, you show your support. This place was rocking today. It was loud in here. And they had a lot of moments along the way, especially from this defense to help add some excitement to it and get people really into the game. We'll talk about one of those moments here in just a second. And at the end, you're just left beside yourself because they find new ways, they invent new ways to lose. It's crazy. But I again, overshadowed in all that was the fact that this defense was so good. And one of those moments I mentioned, with 9:22 to go in the fourth quarter, the Browns made the Bengals go 3 and out with 3 straight sacks. 2 for Myles Garrett back-to-back, his 10th and 11th sacks in his career on Joe Burrow in general. Then Isaiah McGuire cleaned up on the third one to make it 3 straight, and the Bengals punted. It was part of the reason why their offense was moving backwards mostly in the second half and only had 7 yards in the second half because of that. Their field goal that they did kick in the second half, their one scoring opportunity in the second half, it came after the Browns threw an interception that ultimately set them up with a short field and then led to the Bengals being able to kick the field goal to take the 17-16 lead and then win the game in the end. So that was a little frustrating, obviously. But that was really the only drive that they had that was any sort of productive, and it came because the offense turned the ball over. Like, the defense did what it was supposed to do. And I have to think, like, as they left this game, as they left this field, also, like, the secondary I thought held their own. We know how good that Bengals receiving core is. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, who can catch passes, Gesicki, Noah Fant. Like, they have weapons galore. And that was the big talking point leading up to the game, was like, yeah, they got lots of weapons, but if this Browns defensive line can cause problems, Joe Burrow won't be able to get him the ball. And I thought they took a lot away, but the secondary was great as well. There was a couple times where even Greg Newsome held up great in coverage today for the most part. And there was a play late in this game where Jamar Chase tried to haul on a pass on an out route towards the sideline, and he was in tight coverage, made it a tough throw. And it was such a tough throw that he couldn't get the 2 feet down to stay in balance and complete the pass. Like, it was all around a great defensive effort from the Browns today that goes to waste because, again, they couldn't make their kicks and they had some key drops in unfortunate spots. Again, it's the fundamentals, man. And this defense had to feel like it was deja vu all over again from last year, because how many times last year did we look up at the scoreboard and say, how is this game? How is this game close? Or how is this game still like a 1-score game where the Browns are still in it? And it was always because the defense kept them in the game. And that's been my argument about last year's defense in general. It's like, yeah, they did take a step back from 2023. Kind of expect that. 2023 was such a historic season for this defense with the numbers they were putting up, what they were doing to opponents. It was always going to be hard to replicate that. But they were still a good defense. It was just like, when your offense is going 3 and out and committing as many turnovers as they did, it's hard to, carry that the brunt of your team for as long as they had to in games. And eventually it would just sort of spill over and they give up some big plays. There'd be some leaks when you're out there as much as they were out there, 70 plays a game. Like, of course there was going to be times where, the opponent broke through and wore you down. And this year, or at least today, it felt similar, where it was like, yeah, the defense was out there doing its thing. The defense was out there putting the Browns in a situation to be successful and win, and the offense just could not cash in enough to get this thing done and come out of here with a win. And a game that they played in general as a team, they played really, really hard in, that I thought they played really, really well in. They were hyper competitive, which is what I expected. Like I said it all along, if the offense was going to be competent, they were going to be competitive in games with the defense that they had, and that played out today, and it wasn't enough. A lot of the guys in the locker room on the defensive side talked about how they have to go to that next level, which is, you know what, they got 2 turnovers, we got to get a turnover. And that's obviously the exact mindset you'd want from your guys on the defensive side of the ball. But it's hard not to look at this game and watch it back and look at the box score and see how things kind of played out and go through the play-by-play and realize the defense did enough to win this game today, and the offense theoretically did enough to win this game today, and it came down to special teams, the third phase, that kind of cost you. I hate to beat a dead horse here, but that was what defined the game ultimately, because the offense doesn't need to be better, yes, and we'll talk about that here a little bit more, especially throughout this week. But on a day like today, where they limited the damage from the Bengals and set themselves up to score more points to win, the offense did enough, and the defense certainly did enough. And it was frustrating, I'm sure, for them, but also frustrating for fans to see this defense ball out the way it did and then still come up short in week 1. So I'm assuming the goal here is like they can carry that throughout the season. The defensive line settled in. It was great in the second half. I imagine that'll continue to be the case. That's going to be the thing that keeps them in a lot of games this year that maybe they have no business being in. And that could be what happens next week with the Ravens, a team that's a Super Bowl contender and favorite. And the Browns are going to have to really, play well on defense to stay close with a team like that. And the offense is going to have to come along some more. But that's going to be the thing that certainly keeps them in games this year. And it's going to be, if they have a successful season, it's going to be because of that unit, most notably. And I thought we saw that today, which, again, sort of got overshadowed by all the bad stuff that we talked about in the first segment. After a loss like this, too, I understand it's hard to see that glass half full perspective. I'm not expecting anybody to, see that's all going to be rainbows and butterflies for people after how the mood was with fans leaving the stadium at the end. But I'll say this. The future does look bright in Cleveland. I'll explain coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between keys, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage. It gives it back to the fans. Gametime, it became my go-to app for buying tickets. I kid you not. Just last year, I bought tickets for my wife and I to go see Ohio State, Michigan. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best prices, plus all fees are included, so the price you see is what you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. You can too. I'm talking about tickets to your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. It's all available to you. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Gametime today. All right, so listen, again, glass half full perspective. I actually wrote a column about this after the game, and it was the direction my column was already going, so I couldn't pivot to, man, the Browns can't find a kicker at the last second. But the glass half full perspective I thought from today was that the future looks pretty bright for the Cleveland Browns in terms of some of the core or potential core pieces on this team that are young players who contributed in a major way in a game that obviously could have gone either way up until the very end with the Browns losing in heartbreaking fashion as they did. But what I'm talking about here is guys like Dylan Sampson, guys like Harold Fannin, even on the defensive side, which we just talked about, Carson Schlesinger, who was great all preseason, great all training camp, really stood out. And that guy had 8 tackles, a tackle for a loss, 1 QB hit. He didn't get a pass breakup, which I thought was weird because there was a play where he absolutely unloaded on Chase Brown and dislodged a pass attempt to him. And so he had a great game, and that's a young guy on the defensive side of the ball that everybody's excited about. But even on the offensive side, it was the young guys who stood out the most. Flacco found a lot of trust in them early. The first 3 plays of the game, in fact, all went to rookies. It was Dylan Sampson on a carry. It was Harold Fannin on a short catch. And then it was a bubble, or it was a screen pass out to Isaiah Bond. And those were the first few plays of the game, and it was like rookie, rookie, rookie. They made it a priority to get these guys involved early, get them out on the field, get them involved and incorporated into the offense pretty quickly and immediately. And it's a sign of how much they trust those guys. It's a sign of how important those guys, frankly, are to how this season is going to go and to their future. And I thought it was great that you saw them used so often and that they met the moment. Like they played well in this game to boot. Samson finished the day. He had 12 carries, which led the way out of the backfield, 29 yards. He had 8 receptions, which was, he had 8 receptions, which was the most on the team. He was the leading receiver in terms of receptions. 64 yards, which was the second most on the team, behind only Jerry Jeudy, who had 5 catches for 66 yards. And then you had Harold Fannin Jr., who was second in catches with 7, and third in total yards with 63 in the receiving category. I mean, it was an impressive. Sounds okay. Is it still? Hopefully, it's still okay. But as I was trying, all right, hold on. Here's what I'm gonna do. I got a plan here. Okay, we're going to use this microphone instead. It might be a little more echoey, but we'll see. Anyway, the fact that those rookies played at such a high level today, the fact that they were heavily involved in the offense is a good sign for this Cleveland Browns team, because we came into the year, and I said this leading up to this weekend. It just felt like a lot of fans were kind of taking we'll call it like a wait-and-see approach to this season and wanting to see like what the Browns are going to give them in week 1 before they really bought into what the season was going to be. Because last year, the apathy was at an all-time high around this team. I sensed it. I think everybody sort of sensed it. And so even in a loss, I think, as bad as it was, I think that one of the reasons to still tune into this team, and one of the things that should draw people in and get people excited, is what we saw from the rookies today, and the fact that they are part of this plan this year and likely into the future, and that they played so well in their first appearances in their first NFL game and made an impact. Like, they're going to have to make an impact this year if the team's going to be any sorts of good and bounce back from this loss. And the plan is that they also have an impact in the future, because that means you're building a roster that's actually competent to be a potential playoff team. And it's beyond just the rookies, by the way, because I need to mention Cedric Tillman in this conversation as well, because with all the conversation surrounding him this offseason and how the Browns didn't go out and add a true like number 2 wide receiver that was maybe proven in this league, for them to count on him and sort of turn to him and say, we think you're going to be able to take that leap, and for him to sort of deliver in a big way in this game. He had 5 catches, 52 yards, caught the touchdown pass that would have given the Browns a 3-point lead. It only gave him a 2-point lead, but it was their first lead of the game regardless when he caught the touchdown in the third quarter. I mean, just a solid performance from him. Another guy who looks like he could have a bright future here, and that the Browns kind of bet on, and it seemed, at least in week 1, like they guessed right on this one. And that's good news. We talk all the time about Andrew Berry not being able to develop wide receivers or draft wide receivers. If he hits on Cedric Tillman, there's one for you that people should be excited about and happy about. So I liked the result there in terms of not the end result for the game, but I liked the results of how much these young guys were involved in the game plan offensively and how they were ready to contribute in a meaningful way. And that's going to define this season in the future for this Browns team. Even somebody like Fannin had a bad drop early in the fourth quarter on 3rd and 5. It was followed by one of the drops that Jerry Jeudy had today on 4th and 5 when the Browns went for it. They were on the Bengals side of the field trying to score. And like those are, again, two miscues that cost you maybe points there in the end. But what was cool was that like the very next series, Joe Flacco goes right back to Harold Fannin, floats this nice ball up down the sideline for like a 22-yard gain to him. and he caught it. He answered. He forgot. He moved past the one mistake, and that's the type of maturity that you hope for in your rookie players. So there was a lot of good. There was a lot of things to like just in general about what the Browns did today around the miscues and around the missed kicks that obviously proved the most costly because they took points directly off the scoreboard. It was good to see such an emphasis on those young guys and that many of them were stepping up. And by the way, there's a chance that you get another dose of that added in next week because we know Quinshon Judkins back in the building after signing his contract on Saturday and could play as soon as next week. He has a roster exemption, which allows the Browns to basically keep 54 players on the team while they let him get up to speed. There's already talk that he might play next week. And I think if you saw the Browns rushing numbers today, it's probably going to be worthwhile trying to get him out there in some capacity. But that's another rookie, another young player that as soon as next week could be making an immediate impact and could have a massive impact on the Browns just in general, maybe the Browns season as well. And he was frankly the rookie that I was the most excited to see with this team and in this offense because I felt like the run game was going to be so pivotal to what they want to do offensively, getting back to Kevin Stefanski's system. And so it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him in week one. But, you're right back at it next week with these rookies all being important to the success of this team, but also with another one sort of added in here. And so I thought there were some good things from the young guys that, again, unfortunately, gets overshadowed because, well, the Browns lost the game in a heartbreaking manner once again because of special teams and kicking issues. Maybe they'll get it figured out. Maybe Andre Schmidt's the guy. But I didn't actually read through the entire list of kickers, but it's long. It's getting up there to the quarterback jersey in the window, in the storefront window with all the names on the back of it in terms of how bad it is. So unfortunately, a loss for the Browns in a way that it probably shouldn't have been. They had the chance to win, didn't get it done, and we'll react to some more with you on Monday with another episode of the Locked On Browns podcast. Looking forward to what lies ahead this week because I have even more stuff for you, including Lance Riesland, my good friend who's been on the pod before. We're going to break down some of the tape in a unique way so we can actually use these as pod episodes and not get in trouble with the NFL. He's an X's and O's guy. So we're going to go through some of the best plays, some of the things that work, some of the things that didn't. Well, that we'll drop that episode on Tuesday. So make sure you stick around with the Locked On Browns podcast, Dog Pound. If you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button. Make sure Locked On Browns is your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL season. Well, you can check out Locked On NFL, and you can check out any of our station and any of our networks podcasts from across the network. You can also keep it local and check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being every day or at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.